Ladies and gentlemen, kicking off the first stop on his world tour, our new president and prophet, Russell M. Nelson! You say you want some revelation, well, here you go. It's gonna blow your freaking mind.
Hey, welcome back, brothers and sisters, to another episode of the Mormon News Roundup, where D-Bays and Al ruminate on the great and spacious beehive. So we are here for a really exciting episode, coming to you a little late this week. We've had a few problems get in the way, but I think we've got all of that figured out. So we're going to go ahead and get this week's episode going. So this is our 20th episode for August 16th, 2022. And this week we're going to pay homage to the Mormon podcasting legend, Radio Free Mormon, who was going to join us this week, but we had some problems, so he couldn't make it. But we do hope to see him in the future. A couple of the topics we're going over this week: fallout from the AP report of the church sex abuse scandal. That's continuing on. It didn't get swept under the rug. There's a brief history of the sacred scriptural tweeting, as well as President Nelson is dedicating the Washington, D.C. temple, and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has decided to hire a new historian who's not a historian. He happens to be something else. So are you ready to go, D-Bays?
I am thrilled to be here. It is an honor to be here now. Are you recovering from your COVID? You're feeling better there, Al? Is that right?
I'm feeling better now. Although I got to say, this COVID crap, it just keeps hanging on. It's kind of hit me differently than I expected, and at least it didn't hit me so hard that I died from it. There's been plenty of people that suffered that. But this one, it looks like I'm going to pull through and go on to give many more episodes of reporting the Mormon weekly news.
Well, there's an old saying, Al, when a heathen gets sick, that's God's punishment. But when a Christian gets better, that's a miracle. So I'm seeing that you're getting better. Is that right?
I've heard that, yeah, and I am. So I'm not sure if this is a miracle or...
Wow. I like to think on the bright side. We'll just put it that way. Okay.
Exactly. So we'll just... we'll chalk that up to maybe I'm being punished by God, but then he's letting the rain fall on the just and the unjust as well.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll have to save this. We'll have to save the sifting of the wheat and the tares for another time, I guess.
Fair enough. At least not this time.
Okay. Yeah. Very nice. Now, we wanted to get, as you mentioned, Radio Free Mormon on the program this week. His computer crashed. He had a friend who died. He also had a medical issue. Excuse me, it wasn't his time to get on. And obviously, Radio Free Mormon needs absolutely no introduction when it comes to the Mormon podcasting world, especially to his ex-wife's lawyers.
That's right.
So he's done more, save John Dehlin only, for the Mormon podcasting world than any other man that ever lived. Would you agree with that?
I'm pretty sure that's a direct quote, too.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Now, we were trying to get him on the podcast this week. It didn't work out, but he is tougher to nail down than a thief on a cross. You know that, Al?
Mm-hmm. I like that reference.
Yeah, I mean, I've been feeling like Martin Harris in the lost 116 pages of the Book of Mormon. I mean, I asked RFM, I said, hey, will you come on the podcast? He goes, no. Waited a couple of weeks. Will you come on the podcast? Heck no. Waited a couple more weeks. Will you come on the podcast? Sir, this is a Wendy's?
Yeah, you've got a little obsession going on there, D-Bays. Yeah.
Well, he's honestly, we're paying homage to him. He is a personal hero of mine. It was an honor to just be able to think about him coming on the podcast. Hopefully he will again another time. But, it just brings me back. Remember, Joseph Smith, it took him several tries to obtain the sacred golden plates.
Sure
so
did.
I wasn't about to give up on my righteous goal, Al. That being said, though, I do draw the line at exhuming a dead body to secure a guest for this podcast. # Alvin for the win.
That's right. So, yeah, rest in peace, Alvin Smith. You never did get to go get the plates.
No, if I was half the man Alvin was, this podcast would probably already have 100,000 subscribers.
Probably so.
Based on the legend of Alvin, I'll tell you what, he's got some tall shoes to fill. And in fact, Alvin is in the celestial kingdom as we speak.
That's right. Yeah, every family's got the favorite child, and Alvin happened to be it.
Yeah, that's true. I when it comes to determination, I never let go of the iron rod. As Elder Holland might say, I don't have a patty cake, taffy pulled mindset. No, sir.
No,
No,
you
sir.
don't. You
No
are no
way.
dodo.
No, absolutely not. And that's why I kept texting RFM over and over again. He was a little annoyed, but he took it in good stride. In fact, this is what I texted him out. Let me read this text to you that I sent to him. I said, quote, I don't want the same thing that happened to Martin Harris to happen to you, RFM. I remember after Martin Harris abandoned the One True Church, he aimlessly wandered the lone and dreary world without purpose and died penniless, cold, and alone. But take heart. Coming onto the Mormon News Roundup on August 14th could prevent that from happening to you. End
That's
quote.
right. And maybe someday the city of Clarkson will start up a pageant to honor RFM.
Yeah, that could be might be a long shot there, but
yeah. Well, I guess the church did away with pageants. So, but then again,
they kind of did. But actually, the Mesa pageant, they retired it for a couple of years, Al, and they actually this last time they did. I believe I'm almost certain.
Did they revive it?
Yeah, they're running the Mesa pageant. This time, I want to say Mesa Pageant 2022. I'm just looking this up on the fly here, but Mesa Pageant Easter, returns in April 2022. So most of the other pageants, the Manti Pageant and the Palmyra Hill Cumorah Pageant were retired, but the Mesa Easter Pageant did return in 2022.
Well, I'll be.
Yeah.
It seemed for a while there, just about any church center was trying to start up a pageant anywhere that they could.
Yeah, that's true. And I don't know if Clarkson is going to run a pageant for RFM, considering that he lives out on the West Coast.
Have you ever driven through the Clarkson Cemetery where they do the Martin Harris pageant?
No.
That they've invested some infrastructure there. They've got this huge amphitheater. They've got the lighting thing all set up there. They've got that cemetery is a very unique cemetery to go visit. I'll tell you that for sure.
That's definitely on my bucket list, and that doesn't surprise me because remember, Martin Harris. There would be no Book of Mormon without Martin Harris.
You got that right.
Period. Mm-hmm. He gave Joseph Smith the $50 to be able to just have life expenses before the Book of Mormon was around, when Joseph was still translating the Book of Mormon. And then he mortgaged his farm, and according to some sources, I was actually just reading this today. His farm mortgage, he inherited a lot of that farm, but he had a massive farm, and it was in excess of $1 million in today's money. It was a huge, huge deal. He was one of the largest landowners in the area. So no Martin Harris, no Book of Mormon, period.
For sure. Yeah.
And of course, I can't guarantee that if RFM comes on the program that he won't die penniless, cold, and alone. I'm no guarantees. I mean, a wise man once said that you can crap in a box and it, right? Guaranteed on it, right, Al?
Yeah, well, if you consider Tommy Boy to be a wise man, okay, yeah.
I'm not sure if Chris Farley counts as a wise man. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Yeah, maybe not. But after it reminds me, after leaving the church, Oliver Cowdery, he also died of tuberculosis. Now that I'm thinking about it, Al, he never came on the Mormon News Roundup either.
Yeah, so really, we're just trying to preserve RFM's life by providing them the opportunity that Oliver Cowdery never had.
And Martin Harris. I'm starting to detect a pattern, and we care about RFM, so we do want him to come onto the podcast. But he was still pretty equivocal about it, which is why I decided that I wanted to up the ante a little by quoting the Bible to him. I know he's a big Bible guy. And Al, I know that you never go anywhere without your Bible. So can you,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. Revelations 3:15-16. This is what I sent to RFM.
Okay. Well, I will give you the King James Version.
Okay.
I know thy works, that thou art neither cold nor hot. I would thou wert cold or hot. Didn't realize that wort is a word, but hey, it works. So then, because thou art lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I will spew thee out of my mouth.
Right. I sent that to RFM. I asked him if his bosom was feeling, asked him how his bosom felt after he read that scripture. Yeah. And whether he had a stupor or thought. I guess it's a one or the other thing, right? Or I'm not sure.
It's a weird thing, this whole answer to prayer thing, because, either you get heartburn or you feel stupid. Is that what pretty much the two options?
Not really sure, but RFM said he didn't really feel either one of them. He just said he didn't want to be spewed. If he had to be spewed out, he said he didn't want to be spewed very far.
Okay.
And that's understandable.
Yeah. Now, maybe he felt a little nauseous.
Maybe so. Now, I fasted and prayed about RFM getting on the program, and I felt the distinct impression. Al, one might even say, a still small voice, that I needed to quote modern prophets, seers, and revelators, specifically Bishop H. David Burton, the presiding bishopric. And I'm sure that every listener easily recalls his eminent and acclaimed 2001 General Conference talk entitled Standing Tall. I mean, who could possibly forget that hackneyed talk?
True. Yeah. This is the fence sitter talk, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it is. I got the quote right here. It says, This is a very famous quote here. It's, quote, "It is said that a fence sitter eventually has to come down on one side or the other. If we are sitting on the top of life's fences, now is the time to muster the courage to stand tall on the side of righteousness and shun the shackles of sin and commit to a date to be on the Mormon News Roundup."
Mm-hmm. That's right. So Radio Free Mormon, we do expect to get a firm commitment at some point in the future.
Now, that's truly for our day, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
H. David Burton, this was 20 years prior to now. He knew exactly what. That's very prophetic.
Yeah, without a question.
Mm-hmm.
Now, after that quote, I had in my notes to pause for loud laughter, but that would be a sin, so we better keep it moving, right?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but that still didn't have him convinced. You would think, I mean, how much persuasion is necessary? But I'm going to tell you, I needed to get a little bit firmer. So I pulled out the world-renowned LDS missionary commitment pattern. What is that? Oh, my goodness. What is that, Al?
You built a relationship of trust with him and then culminated in asking him a direct will you question?
You know your stuff. You know your stuff. And obviously we know that is something that literally never faileth, right?
That's true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that didn't really work either. I'm pulling out all the stops here. So I sent him, for those who refused to come on the podcast, I sent him a YouTube link to the second Matrix movie. In the second Matrix movie, Trinity and Neo go into the basement, and they have all those guns, and they shoot everybody up. And that's why I said, if you refuse to come on the podcast, we don't want this to happen to you.
That's right.
Now, some would say that I'm taking things a little too far, but, you remember Sidney Rigdon's salt sermon?
That was trying to get rid of the apostates and the Missourians, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And some people thought that he went too far, but, sometimes, isn't the Doctrine and Covenant says sometimes we need to rebuke betimes with sharpness and afterwards turn up the guilt? Is that the saying?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the truth shall set you free, right?
Yeah, it seems like it works, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, once RFM comes onto the program, we will be eternally blessed and grateful, especially since we wouldn't have to put a javelin through them, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean,
this will always be so.
Absolutely. Brigham Young said that, absolutely. Now we all know without a shadow of a doubt that the church has absolutely no paid ministry, right?
Mm-hmm, that's right.
But I think our listeners need to deserve to know how much is the basic retainer fee for a Seedlibs podcast appearance by RFM. I think that should be public knowledge.
I think so.
Instead of a salary, let's just call it a modest living allowance.
Okay, yeah, that sounds a lot better. Yeah,
it does. Absolutely, it does sound a lot better that way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm going to tell you, getting RFM's phone number, that was harder than Indiana Jones finding the Holy Grail.
Oh, really? You got his phone number?
Yeah, I did. Now, RFM actually made me covenant before God, angels, and these witnesses that I would never reveal his phone number. And I still don't know why that was necessary, but luckily, since we're post-1990, there were no penalties involved. #GiveThanks.
That's right. President Nelson's favorite hashtag.
Yeah, and I used, the other, you're not going to believe this, Al, but on RFM, he's a lawyer. His law firm sent me on his official letterhead. He forced me to sign and notarize the following statement. I, D-Bay, solemnly swear to never reveal RFM's phone number, nor his accompanying real name, nor auction them immediately on Reddit to the highest bidder.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
I mean, talk about humiliating.
Yeah, I'll say.
I faxed that over to him, but when he wanted us to sign those NDAs, we have our standards, right?
Exactly. I mean, it would be nice if we could promise to not disclose, but when it comes to journalism, all bets are off. Everything's on the table. If it's news, we will report it.
Yeah. The Mormon News Roundup will not be stifled, right?
Yeah, exactly. So even if we signed the NDAs, we would then inevitably be fined for breaking them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, this also reminds me of Matthew chapter 22. This is the parable of the wedding banquet, which is kind of an obscure obscure parable here that Jesus gave.
Yeah.
And from the New International Version, Jesus spoke to them again in parable, saying, and let me quote from starting in verse 1, "The kingdom of heaven is like to a king who prepared a wedding banquet for his son. he sent to those who had been invited to the banquet to tell them to come, but they refused to come. The king was enraged. Then he said, the wedding banquet is ready, but those I invited did not deserve to come. Many are invited, but few are chosen. What's your interpretation of this parable here, Al?
I think we've thrown a lot of invitations out there, and we might just end up being like really ticked off kings when RFM doesn't come on the podcast. But that invitation is still out there. Hey, you've been called and chosen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if his calling and election has been made sure. And, if he's had a second anointing, if that affects his decision to want to come on the podcast, but he's welcome to either way, right?
Certainly. Yep.
Yeah.
One way or another.
Yeah. Now, his computer malfunction, it kind of reminds me of the malevolent spirit that attempted to interrupt Joseph Smith's first vision. I mean, Satan has obviously been doing this on this and other podcasts, but I can tell you, no unhallowed hand can stop this podcast from progressing, right, Al?
That's right. That's straight from the mouth of Joseph Smith.
You got it. Now, we do have some follow-ups from last week here, so I hate to bring this up here, Al, but LDS General Authority and Council and the Young Men's President, Brad Wilcox, he's back in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. Uh-oh. He's wading into the Associated Press church abuse scandal. This is not going to end well, right?
What do you do now?
Yeah, you saw this. Now, he's quoted in the Salt Lake Tribune just this morning. Let me find this incredible quote here. Okay, here we go. Article by Peggy Fletcher Stack today. We read the following, quote, in surprisingly candid remarks, Brother Wilcox is on record as saying, quote, maybe we're asking the wrong question. Maybe instead of saying, why is the church hiding child sexual abuse? Maybe what we should be asking is, why did the whites and other races in the story not pay more tithing?
That's right.
That's a good question.
Oh, Brother Wilcox, you will always be funny for that.
Yeah, that really makes you think, though, doesn't it, Al?
Oh, it does for sure.
Yeah, that's what he's always asking, the hard-hitting, thought-provoking questions. What I love most about him is that he asks the questions that anti-Mormon critics, they just can't handle.
Yeah, because, this is the kind of questions that we couldn't pay people to ask these kinds of questions.
Yeah, and if you read the CES letter, is that question in there, Al?
Oh, no. Jeremy Reynolds did not have the foresight to put that question in there.
No, and he can't answer that question. That's a very good question. Yeah. How come the people in the story did not pay more tithing? That's what really makes you think. Now, Jeremy. Obviously, Al, that is the Mormon joke of the week. That's just that's.
Yes, it was.
Now, it takes a professional or maybe somebody slightly deranged to combine Mormonism, humor, and child sex abuse. Mm-hmm. But if that's what you're looking for,
yeah, that's why we're here for you guys.
Yeah,
thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, you come to the right podcast. If that's what you want, is Mormonism, humor, and child sex abuse. That's that. It's all here.
Yep, we're all here. Mm-hmm.
Now we were going to issue a challenge for when RFM comes onto the program, which we assume that he will do in the future, knowing that he doesn't want any javelins headed his way, right?
Right.
We assume that he's going to want to come on. So if at any time, this is the challenge for our listeners for when he does come on. If at any time RFM mentions that he was a dance major or utters the word Texas, everyone will donate $100 on their next tithing slip to the new church tithing category. What's that name? We covered this a couple of weeks ago. You remember those new tithing categories, Al?
Okay, so I remember that the church did the new one, the general category, but I think you're referring to the other one that just recently was formed on the tithing slip. The Ensign Peak, Second Coming, War Chest, Rainy Day, Just in Case, Sacred, Not Secret Fund.
Yeah, that's a good memory, Al. That's right. The Ensign Peak, Second Coming, War Chest, Rainy Day, Just in Case, Sacred, Not Secret Fund. That's a good tithing category, Al.
That's right.
Yeah, and so when he does come on, if he mentions Texas or dance, then we're all going to need to donate to that category. It just makes things real simple. Go straight to Ensign Peak. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Just right into the investment fund.
That's right.
Now, the more that I think about Ensign Peak, though, Al, it's kind of like, some people think that Ensign Peak is a Ponzi scheme. Have you heard that before?
Yeah, I've heard it accused of being a Ponzi scheme. Not sure how much I would agree with that.
Yeah, okay. The more that I think about it, the more I think of it as kind of like an anti-Ponzi scheme because there's incredibly solid investment rates going in. But there's miserable return rates coming out. Nothing ever comes out.
Exactly. You don't start withdrawing from that or getting any dividends from that until you're at least a 70, right?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, as far as getting your investment returned, and the people that are buying into this scheme, that they're not expecting to get that back either.
So, no, and the people who have tried to get their money back, the vast majority of them never get it back, as we've seen the John Huntsman lawsuit. Once it goes in, it ain't coming back out, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, we had some follow-ups from last week. We had John Ogden from upliftkids.org on the program last week, and we talked about how the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints actually deleted tweets concerning the AP sexual abuse scandal. But through your dedicated journalism, Al, we found those tweets, which we're going to cover in a moment, right? Hashtag teaser.
Yes, we did.
Yes, we're going to cover those. A little teaser here for you. Now, people on Facebook are saying there's a lot of hypocrisy here because no one in the sacred scriptures tweeted or deleted tweets, right?
Or did they?
Oh, wait a minute. We do have some tweets. We talked about this. We do have some tweets in the Holy Scripture. So let's start in the Old Testament. What's the first divine tweet, Al?
Well, let's see. If we go all the way back to Exodus, then we see God writing the Ten Commandments, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I would consider that to be a tweet because it's if you take each commandment, verse by verse, you're less than 140 characters per commandment. So yeah, I think it fits.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was written by God's finger. So move over, Jack Dorsey. Exodus chapter 20 is the first tweet. I mean, they were revealed to Moses at Mount Sinai, scribed by the finger of God on 2 tablets of stone, and then kept in the Ark of the Covenant. And don't look in that Ark, right, Al? We obviously know that. Yeah,
we learned that in Rages of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, we learned that valuable lesson. But there's also another tweet in the Old Testament, and it's about Belshazzar's feast, also known as the story of the writing on the wall in chapter 5 of the book of Daniel. Now, you familiar with that one, Al?
Yes, I am. This is the one where they're having a party, and all of a sudden a disembodied hand appears and it writes some words on the wall. I can't remember what the words are, but yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it foretold the upcoming Babylonian Empire and that was going to fall, and the Persians were going to take over that very night. Now, those words that were written on the wall are Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin, which is conveniently under 140 characters, right?
It sure is.
You know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, I think that's my brother-in-law's new temple name, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin. So, I don't think I was supposed to say that. So we may need to edit that out. I don't know. I didn't get his permission to reveal that name. Let's keep on going. So God does tweet, but apparently in a very cryptic fashion. I mean, what a bummer. Imagine getting a divine tweet directly from the Almighty, but not knowing what it said. Oh, and just as soon as someone explains the message to you, you get murdered that very night. Hashtag karma.
Yeah, that's will ruin your whole weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. What about the New Testament? Did Jesus tweet out?
Oh, I'm sure that if we look into the New Testament, we can find some examples of Jesus. The woman taken in adultery.
Right, yeah. If you will please turn with us in your well-annotated quads to John chapter 8, verses 6 through 8. You have the story of the woman taken in adultery. What happened in that story, Al?
Okay, so they bring before Jesus the woman that's been taken in adultery, and what Jesus does is he stoops down, writes with his finger on the ground, and then tells him, "Hey, he of you that is without sin, let him cast the first stone at her."
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's go ahead and read. Would you read that from John chapter 8, verses 6 through 8?
Yeah, certainly.
Okay.
This they said, tempting him, that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down, and with his finger wrote on the ground, as though he heard them not. So when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself, and said unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. And again he stooped down, and wrote on the ground.
Very nice. Now, so this is basically Jesus tweeting twice, right? From my readings. Does that make sense?
We can assume so. We don't know how many characters he wrote, but I would call it the same as a tweet. Okay.
Yeah, basically. I mean, you have what would Jesus do? Well, forget that. How about what would Jesus tweet? Now, this all makes perfect sense if you compare it with John chapter 5, verse 19, which says the Son can do nothing but himself. He can only do that which he sees the Father doing, because whatever the Father does, the Son does also. I mean, think back to Daniel chapter 5.
That's right. Yeah. So Jesus would be following the example that he saw the Father when the Father wrote on the king's wall there. And then Jesus was just doing the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he stooped down. He stooped down twice to write. And I'm thinking the first time was a tweet, and maybe the second time was a retweet. That's what I'm guessing here.
Yeah.
That, and I prayed about that, Al, using Moroni's promise. And I feel, scratch that. I know that it is true. No, just kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay.
Just joking. Seriously, though, I did look this up. And most New Testament scholars believe that if you study chapter 8 of the Gospel of John in the earliest extant Aramaic manuscripts, that Jesus was actually using Snapchat. That's why the writing disappeared the first time. He had to write it again. Snapchat.
Yeah, it deletes after 10 seconds. Is that right?
Yeah. I may need some younger co-hosts here.
I know. I'm so out of touch with what the kids are into these days.
Yeah. Well, obviously, Al, we know the Bible. It's only to be trusted as far as it is translated correctly, right?
That's right. Yeah, and don't trust anybody over 30.
Yeah, so let's move over to the most correct of any book on earth. And the Book of Mormon, it also contains an ancient tweet.
Really?
Yeah. So remember the story of Aminadai, not with a B, but with an M, Aminadai and the writing of the wall in the temple. So during a speech to the people of Ammonihah, Amulek states that Aminadai was known as a prophet that had, quote, interpreted the writing which was upon the wall of the temple, which was written by the finger of God, end quote. Now, this really makes me wonder where the inspiration for this story could have possibly come from.
Yeah, that's, could that, I don't know. It's not like that exact same story is located in the Book of Daniel, right?
How could Joseph Smith have possibly known? Talk about a bullseye, # evidence.
That's right.
Yeah, it reminds me of that famous scripture, in the mouth of two witnesses shall every tweet be established. So you have the tweet of the old. So the Book of Mormon is really another testament of Jesus' tweets,
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
So again, though, in the Book of Mormon, God's tweeting in a foreign language once again. Now, this is some advanced conjecture here, Al, but I'm guessing that this tweet was probably written in Reformed Egyptian.
That stands to reason. Reformed Egyptian is the religious language that they were using to engrave the plates, right? So
yeah. Sure. So he must have been doing that again, Reformed Egyptian again. Story checks out. By the way, I'm planning on submitting that theory to the next Sunstone Symposium. this is some really deep stuff here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's deep.
it's full of something. It is definitely full of something.
Mm-hmm.
But after the sacred writing in the Book of Mormon on the wall was interpreted, sadly, apparently not worth writing down. One would think that whatever the creator of the universe personally wrote on the wall just might be important enough to preserve for posterity. You got to save space on those pesky gold plates for yet another Captain Moroni-inspired bloody genocidal rampage. Am I right?
Exactly, right? That is kind of the problem there, because with the large plates being the historical record and the small plates that most of the bulk of the Book of Mormon comes from is supposed to be the spiritual and the religious record, right? But hey, we got plenty of battles that we need to hear about, right?
Yeah, Captain Moroni digging the trenches, check. Captain Moroni cutting the timbers, check. Mm-hmm. Captain Moroni slaughtering half-naked Lamanite savages left, right, and center. Check, check, check.
Mm-hmm.
The figure of Almighty God, Lord of the universe, creator of heavens and earth, personally inscribes an important message on the wall of a sacred temple.
Mm-hmm.
Meh.
And that message gets interpreted by Aminadai, and they don't tell us what that message is.
Right, yeah.
So the God, you're right. The creator of all universe comes and personally writes on the wall of the temple, really important message. Or maybe it wasn't really important. Maybe he was, maybe he just wanted us to make sure that we were pronouncing something properly or changing the name of something.
Or maybe the message was that we needed to pay more tithing. I'm not sure. Okay, good. I'm not. Or maybe the message was Pele Ale. Who knows what the I'm going to do a little bit more research into this, Al. I'm pretty sure it was in Reformed Egyptian. I'm going to see if I can get to the bottom of this. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
I'd be really curious to see what that message actually said.
Yeah, I definitely am too. So, I mean, but in summary here, to summarize all of this, where are we going with this? That's a good question. The modern LDS Church's PR department, the public relations, the tweets, the Facebook posts, the Instagram posts, they have a solid scriptural foundation, including the deleting of tweets, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So hopefully this extended exegesis is going to shut down all of these church-hating naysayers, right, Al?
Mm-hmm. That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. But unlike Russia trying to find Hillary Clinton's missing 30,000 emails, you actually did find the church's missing sex abuse scandal tweets, didn't you, Al?
We sure did.
Yeah, okay. So what's going on there?
All right. So this is a great point for us to jump into our first article, I think. And this one comes from Axios.com, where we've got the church has decided to issue a very vague rebuttal on the sex abuse hotline. And by vague, I mean that they don't really talk about it at all. They just say, well, the Associated Press, they misinterpreted it, or they seriously mischaracterized what this is about and what our protocols are for reporting child sex abuse. But they don't ever say specifically what the Associated Press got wrong. They keep saying that, well, yeah, we have a helpline and it's there to, give the bishops instructions on how to handle reported child sex abuse. But the Associated Press has just grossly mischaracterized it. They don't know what they're talking about, and we've got this all under control. But they don't say what they really have, or where the Associated Press got it wrong. So I'm not exactly sure what to think of this with regards to that, because I mean the Associated Press, they went over 13,000 items or different documents in order to come up with this whole case and this whole report that they made. So the Associated Press, they're not really the ones to mischaracterize or to misunderstand or misinterpret things.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
yeah.
Look, okay, a couple things. That's good. Nice job on that. First of all, I bet you $1 for a donut that the Associated Press, before they ran this story, went to the church and was ready to take the church's comments on this.
I'm sure they did. Yeah.
And when you read the Associated Press, there's nothing in there from the church whatsoever. Why would the Associated Press run a huge national bombshell, accusational, controversial article and not reach out to the church for comment?
Yeah, exactly. And especially when the church, especially the way the church handles these things, the church always says, oh, we have no comment at this time. The church representative never says, okay, yeah, we'll engage in a discussion with you. We'll explain what's going on. The church tends to favor taking the stance of doing damage control after the fact rather than actually addressing it at the time.
Yeah. So, I mean, the church, according to this article, the church repeatedly posted and deleted its statement on Twitter that, quote, abuse of a child or any other individual is inexcusable. So the church first tweeted the entire statement, but then eventually blocked the replies. Yeah. And then the church deleted and reposted that first tweet with replies blocked and shared the rest of the thread under it, which opened the original post to a bunch of comments and reopened it back up. Then it deleted all the tweets in the AP article and reposted its entire statements with the replies blocked. They kept going back and forth and back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think the reason why is because the church is not getting a lot of support here. It's getting plenty of support from members who have no idea what is going on different forums such as Facebook. But when it comes to Twitter, it seems like the church doesn't have nearly as many supporters on Twitter. But they just got bombarded with all kinds of people telling them, yeah, you guys are full of it. This is, we all know what's going on here. And,
Yeah, I mean, our hearts are just breaking for everybody who is associated with this article, obviously. This is a terrible tragedy.
Yeah.
And finally, the church took I believe it was a 9-day break on Instagram, or it might have been an 11-day break on Instagram. Yeah, I'm not really sure. They took a lot of time.
They took a hiatus for sure.
Yeah. They took a hiatus and didn't tweet anything out. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as President Nelson, he did finally start back up his Twitter again. Mm-hmm. And his first tweet, what was his first tweet after this incredible bombshell sexual abuse scandal? What was his first tweet about after the period, the cooling off period?
Yeah, following the example of Brad Wilcox, President Nelson decided that, hey, this is a great opportunity for us to deflect and distract. So we're going to, rather than address the 600-pound gorilla in the room, we're going to deflect and distract by saying, hey, recently I invited you to take charge of your own testimony. Please share with me what steps you're taking to accomplish this. I can't wait to be inspired by you. So he said, how are you taking charge of your testimony? That's his first tweet after this whole thing. And the responses are rather amusing.
In some ways they are amusing, but in some ways it's really sad because, you're the CEO. You're essentially the CEO. It's a corporation sold. You're at the top. There is no board of directors of a $250 billion company that has, almost 20 million people in it.
Yeah.
How hard is it to just say, I could write this tweet. It's not that hard. Our hearts break for those who are involved. I personally opening an investigation and I'm appointing one of the apostles to head this up. We're going to solve this problem. We're going to fix it. We're going to shine a light on it. If there's issues with the helpline or with Bishop's training, we're going to strengthen that. And I'm not going to rest until all of this abuse is put to an end. It's not that hard. I just literally came up with that on the fly.
And, that approach has worked very well for the Catholic Church. The Pope went to Canada and issued a very sincere, heartfelt apology for what was done in Catholic schools to the indigenous children. So and the Catholic Church is going to survive that because they're smart enough to understand that people value apologies.
Yeah.
This podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Signature Books, www.signaturebooks.com. We invite you to check out their latest book written by Romney Burke, which is entitled Susie Young Gates, Daughter of Mormonism.
Brigham Young had over 50 wives and 56 children, but none has better name recognition than daughter Susie Young Gates. She lived from 1856 and died in 1933. Yet she, like so many women of Mormonism's past, has remained a mystery to most church members. In Susie Young Gates, Romney Burke, the author, paints a portrait of a strong woman who rose to prominence within the church, fought for the rights of women throughout the country, yet dealt with personal trials and her share of heartbreak.
And there's another article that was run, and the title of the article is Mormon Church Sets Up Phony Tip Line for Sex Abuse Victims. That's how this is being portrayed. Yeah. The tip line is actually phony.
Yeah, and that's what it is like the way that this came out is that, this was supposed to be a reporting hotline, but what people don't seem to understand is it wasn't phony. It was set up this way where the hotline goes directly to the church's legal arm.
First it goes to the risk management department. So this line goes to the risk management department, and then the worker, the church entry-level worker, then decides if it is high enough importance to then get moved on to Curtin McConkie, the church's law firm.
Exactly. Yeah. So the way it's set up, it's not like they're saying, this is disingenuous, but it's set up the way it's supposed to work. The way it's supposed to work is assess the damage that could be done to the church by reporting this or by addressing this or allowing it to come to light, and then what do we have to do to clean up the mess? Do we have to pay somebody off? Do we have to settle with the kid? What needs to be done? And that's the whole purpose of this all along.
That's what this abuse line, so-called abuse line, seems to be focused on. The church's legal, what do they call it? Legal. What could happen to the church? It is not victim focused.
Yeah, legal impact.
Yeah, legal impact or the legal, I'm not sure the exact word, but it is focused on inwardly on the church instead of outwardly on abuse victims.
Yeah.
And that's what the AP story said. So the church refuted that and said, no, that's not the way that works. Well, then what is the AP story missing? I don't understand.
Yeah, and that's just is we never find out how it's supposed to work. If the church says, well, that's not the way it is,
Right.
you guys have it wrong. Okay, well,
Okay.
let's say we have it wrong.
Yeah.
Help us get it right.
Right. Yeah, it stands to reason. Yeah, exactly. You hit the nail on the head. Now, we have a poll here. We want our listeners, we have a website. It's called www.mormonnewsroundup.org, or you can send us an email to kolob@mormonnewsroundup.org. That's KOLOB. And if you go over to Anchor, you can engage with us on this particular article over on Anchor. And we have the Mormon News Roundup poll of the week, which is available only on Anchor. And it talks about this article in particular. So listeners out there, how do you feel about the church deleting child sex abuse tweets without explanation? And there's several choices. Al, can you read us number one?
Yeah, number one. I ain't sweating it. Probably just Uchtdorf going rogue again.
Yeah, Uchtdorf always going rogue, right?
Yeah, he's the one that seems to be out of step with the rest of them.
One of these things is not like the other.
That's right.
And he's the only one born in Europe or Asia, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. He's German.
What about is it number two?
Number two. I'm very upset. This clearly does not reflect the high level of transparency we have all come to expect from the church.
Oh, yeah. When it comes to transparency in the church, those just go hand in hand, right, Al?
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Or is it number three?
Number three. Well, if the church can delete some embarrassing tweets, let's delete the Book of Abraham facsimiles while we're at it.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, we deleted the Doctrine of Covenants. Used to be, the doctrine was the lectures on faith, and the covenants were the revelations.
Yeah,
we just deleted the lectures on faith in 1920 because we didn't want them anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so let's just do that if we can do that with tweets and we can do it with the lectures on faith, let's just do it to the Book of Mormon facsimiles while we're at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the church had the Kinderhook plates as well, which they thought were authentic. Once they figured out they were forgery, they just deleted those puppies as well. So the church just had no problem in deleting embarrassing things in the past. So
sure.
Yeah, no problem. Or is it number four?
Number four. This never would have happened if we had just let Sherry Dew become Relief Society General President. # Wendy's Best Gal Pal.
That's a good hashtag, Al.
I do. I like that one.
Best Gal Pal. That's a nice hashtag. Sherry Dew, was she first counselor or second counselor?
I think she was first counselor if I remember right. But yeah.
Oh, okay.
The most advanced single woman that the church has ever allowed to advance that far. It was amazing.
Yep, and this never would have happened if we just let her go all the way to the Relief Society president. Or is it number five?
Number five. Those tweets are gone now because just like the sacred golden plates, Moroni asked for them back. Duh.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot to be said for that. Moroni seems to give things to people, and then he just kind of takes them right back.
He does. Moroni giveth, and Moroni taketh away.
Yeah, well, blessed be the name of Moroni. But that is, as we've said, is a little too close to the word Mormon. So let's just take it easy on Moroni. All right,
we'll take it easy on Moroni.
He's getting fired from all of the temples anyway,
Yeah.
So,
he got deleted from the church logo.
Yeah.
Before they did the rebranding of the logo, it was Moroni.
Well, that's what happens, Al, when you don't live up to your covenants and wear the sacred garments day and night. Moroni obviously he never did that. Yeah. No, he wasn't. He's not a good spokesperson for that very reason. Or is it number six?
Number six, the prophet can never lead the church astray. Unlike the half-witted intern running the church's Twitter account.
Yeah, who is running the church's Twitter account anyway?
That's what we all want to know.
I would assume that it is Jesus, but does he delegate or?
He seems to be a delegator. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he called disciples, right? I mean, somebody's got to be running it. I would call for that person to be fired, except for it's probably a church service missionary. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And we would hate for them to stop paying their own money to do that job for the church.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be unfair. Or is it number seven?
Number seven, those missing tweets are just like the missing Lamanites. Forget about it. # sorry you're not a Lamanite.
# sorry you're not a Lamanite. That's a good hashtag, Al.
It is. It really is. I like.
Yeah, I mean, you can't find those tweets anymore. Just forget about it. They're not coming back. So that's our Mormon News Roundup poll of the week there. Head on over to Anchor if you want to engage with us there. But I was thinking, Al, I know that everyone thinks that this the sexual abuse scandal is the biggest scandal that the church has ever had. But I I want to kind of riff on that a little bit in a mostly serious manner. And I think that there is a greater atrocity out there that's even worse than the child sex abuse, even worse, Al, than the Mountain Meadow Massacre or Kirtland Safety Society, Missouri War, underage child brides, lack of charitable giving, anything else.
Really?
Yeah, I know. You'd think I covered it all, didn't I?
This is going to be a big deal. I smell a tangent.
Yeah, I mean, this. I'm not even talking about Paul Dunn. I'm referring. I'm referring to the systematic annihilation of an entire race of people, the Lamanites.
Oh,
how long have the Lamanites been around anyway, Al?
Let's say from the Book of Mormon times, roughly 2,500 years, going back to 600 BC ish.
Yeah, they have is it safe to say they have a beautiful and rich tradition and history?
I would assume so. I mean, at least that's what we get told all throughout the Book of Mormon.
Yeah, I mean, we've told that over and over again. But I remember President Spencer W. Kimball said in the 1971 General Conference, quote, "Our Lamanite work has been going forward. The American Indians and others of the Lamanites, 60 million or more of them in South and Central America and Mexico and the islands, they're accepting the gospel," end quote. So, Al, let me get this straight. There's 60 million Lamanites alive or more in 1971, and where are they now?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, where are they?
Up until a few years ago, the church claimed that the Lamanites were the primary ancestors of the Native Americans or the indigenous, peoples here in America.
Yeah.
But DNA has since kind of pulled the plug on that one and said, no, these guys mostly came from Mongolia, their ancestry, and they haven't found a drop of Middle Eastern blood in the Native Americans. So,
but that's only in the last couple of years. We knew there were 60 million Lamanites alive in 1971.
Exactly. So something happened between 1971 and now.
Right. And that's what I'm wondering. So I hope the Strengthening Church Members Committee is listening to this next sentence because, Al, it is the most important sentence I've ever uttered on this podcast.
Okay.
The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has systematically and ruthlessly hunted the Lamanites to near extinction. Hashtag Danite secret combinations.
That's as good a theory as any other theory I've got because, 60 million in 1971, not a single one today.
Yeah.
So, where did they go?
Yeah, what's so sad about this, Al, is that we were specifically warned about this in the Book of Mormon itself.
Yeah.
A book of scripture truly for our day.
That's right.
I mean, this is one of the greatest cover-ups in church or world history. We're talking about over 60 million people vanishing without a trace. I mean, you remember that flight that disappeared? What was that flight? In Malaysian Airlines?
Yeah, Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 was a big deal back in 2014.
Yeah, and it disappeared over the Southern Indian Ocean, right?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was just a couple hundred people, but they spent millions, tens of millions of dollars trying to find them, right?
Yeah, and never came up with anything. They're just gone.
Right. So, I mean, where are the LDS church leaders who should be looking for these lost remnants of the house of Israel? They're missing in action. The Book of Mormon commands us to bring the Book of Mormon to the Lamanites.
Exactly. This isn't a couple hundred people on an airplane that went down. This is 60 million people that were on the earth or on the face of the earth back in 1971, and today they're gone. They're nowhere to be found.
Right. And some people I know, I can hear my listeners out there, some are our listeners out there, they would say, okay, this is just some bizarre conspiracy theory. Not so. The church removed scores of Lamanite children straight off the reservations from 1954 to 1996, right, Al?
Yeah, and they referred to these children as Lamanites. So you had a whole bunch of this was the Indian Placement Program,
right?
Yeah, and they started it up to say, well, we want to give these kids on the reservation, a chance at a better education, and so they went and rounded up any kids that wanted to go to live with a white family in the rest of the United States, mostly between, say, Montana and Arizona. Throughout the Morador. So they took the kids, placed them with families, and then you got these, very wonderful priesthood holders are like, oh my gosh, we've got a Lamanite living in our house. Oh my heck, how I never thought I'd ever live to see the day where we had a Lamanite living with us. You're a Lamanite. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, we knew that there was lots of them during that 40 years of systematic removals, right?
There was also plenty of abuse and plenty of things happened there, but I don't need to get into that. Let's just keep this ball rolling.
Yeah, I mean, but where are these Lamanites today? No one knows. No one knows who or where the Lamanites are. Hashtag smoking gun. Exactly. They're not just missing. They're gone. They're erased from existence.
Yeah. Well, and we know where a lot of these kids, they grew up. We know where a lot of these kids are, but a lot of these kids are, they're no longer Lamanites. They're Navajo. They're Ute. They're Shoshone Bannock. These kids, they belong to their Native American tribe, but they no longer are Lamanites.
Yeah, I mean, if you look this up on Fair Mormon, which has been renamed Fair LDS, it says that anyone could have wiped these Lamanites out, and there's no direct proof of church leader culpability. I get that. But the problem is, who is the only group who knows who the Lamanites are?
Yeah, I mean, that phrase didn't come from nowhere. It's not like this phrase is what all the Native Americans were calling themselves. This phrase was coined by Joseph Smith. He said that that's what they were called in the Book of Mormon from the record on the gold plates that he translated. And so that's where we started calling Native Americans Lamanites from.
So basically, the church is the only entity with the knowledge and the resources who could have done this, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I know it's chilling to ponder, but the worst thing about this all is that absolutely no one is talking about this cover-up thanks to the spin from the church's PR department. I mean, this is absolutely sick.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Now, to all of our listeners out there, to every saint who can consider himself to be called a saint, if you want to help us get to the bottom of the church's genocidal annihilation of over 60 million Lamanites, I mean, we're talking men, women, brothers and sisters, children, sons and daughters of God, head on over to Patreon or Anchor and make a donation, $5 a month, $10 a month, whatever you can afford. We can still find them. Yep. We can try to find whoever's left. And Al, on behalf of my co-host, we pledge with everything that we hold sacred to hold whoever in the church is responsible for this atrocity to justice.
Absolutely. And I think in order for us to accomplish that, it's going to take at least $5 a month.
Yeah, that seems like about the right amount of number.
Yeah.
Right donation. Yeah, absolutely.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, only with your support can we stop the madness. We need to get to the bottom of this outrageous genocide. If you look up the genocides in Wikipedia, this is the largest genocide that has ever happened now.
That's right.
No one is talking about it.
This is 10 times the size of the Jewish Holocaust in World War II that the Nazis.
Yeah, it is. Committed. I mean, it goes, and it goes all the way to the top. It may go all the way to the top. I don't know if it does or not. We need those donations to figure this out. And I'm talking about Russell Marion Nelson Sr. It's about time that someone asked him, what did he know and when did he know it?
His middle name's really Marion.
Yes, Russell Marion Nelson Sr.
I didn't know that. Yeah, it does.
It's got a very nice ring to it.
That's right. And, it doesn't look good since this is the guy that's all about changing the names of stuff. So if he changed the names of the Lamanites to something else, the people need to know.
That's a good point. That is a good point. Yeah, absolutely. Now let's continue on. We had we're going to wrap up on the sexual abuse stuff. Yeah. There was a change.org petition that was just dropped this week by Courtney Polos, and the title of it on change.org is "Make LDS Clergy Mandatory Reporters." So in some states like Utah, members of the clergy are not required to report when someone confesses to abuse, even if the child sex abuse happens to a young child. We got some really strange laws out there on the books, and this change petition says we need to stop that. Instead, clergy need to be mandatory reporters, kind of like school teachers, kind of like some of these counselors, and also that we is requesting to update the church's handbook that says that every single instance of child abuse must be immediately reported to both local police and child protective services without regard to any state, national, other reporting laws, and without consideration to whatsoever to the perpetrator's desire or capacity to repent. How do you feel about this change.org petition now?
My knee-jerk response to this when it first came out is, in fact, my knee-jerk response was I think I signed my name to it because I thought, hey, this sounds really good on the surface. Mm-hmm. This just sounds like a really good step. Protect the children, make all clergy mandatory reporters. As soon as we find out that there's abuse going on, make it mandatory that they have to report it to the police directly.
Right.
But then we started looking into this a little bit and doing some research, and we've seen that there's other things that the church can do, and also leave those lines open by keeping, like we can keep the Priest Penitent Act in effect, so that they can still, people can confess sins, and because of a penitent confession to a clergy member, they wouldn't have to have it reported to the police. But we can implement some better things that would provide protection while also not closing it off. Because, the worst thing that we could do is, make everybody scared to death to report their own abuse that they're perpetrating. And then just have them never report it, because then we don't ever find out about it until it's way too late. But I do think that there are some measures that could be taken by the church right now to make this a lot better situation, and they could still keep the priest penitent privilege.
Yeah. The church does not really necessarily have much ability to affect some states' local laws. Obviously, there's Utah and some other states locally in the Mountain West. They have the ability to affect those laws, but they're not going to be able to affect laws in New York and California.
Yeah, exactly.
So the states that have the penitent privilege, as you said, Al, if you remove that the privilege of having someone who says I can go into my priest, confess something, and it'll be privileged, you won't have any reporters. The guy who was in the horrible sexual predator in this article by the AP, yeah. He might not have ever gone in to see his bishop if he knew that he didn't have any confidentiality whatsoever.
Well, exactly. He obviously didn't walk into his local police department.
Yeah.
Which, if he was looking for justice, that's where he would have gone. But he didn't. He went to a priest or he went to a clergy member instead.
Yeah. So people out there say, oh, the helpline is horrible and everything needs to change. I'm asking you listeners, what do you want the bishops to do? Do you want your bishops to break the law? You're literally going to ask these bishops to break the law and to, be fined or potentially jailed or have a criminal record for breaking the law. It's just not that simple as to say, oh, these bishops are horrible and the helpline is evil. There's a lot of laws on the books, and the people need to follow the law. I don't know what else to say. Now, you can ask your congressman or senator or whomever to change the law if you think the law is bad.
Mm-hmm. Sure, and that's what the change.org petition's for, is they're trying to get that law changed, right? So that's one avenue, but that can be very costly. It can be very costly for time as well. Yeah, slow. Exactly.
And that's why I've been thinking about it this week, and we talked this over as well. It seems to be a dichotomy. It says that, okay, if you remove priest privilege, then people won't be able to confess, and you won't be able to find the people at all. But if you keep it around, then nothing happens. So it's like a catch-22. There's no good solution. But I can tell you, I thought a little bit about this, and Al, maybe I've told you before, but I worked in sexual assault prevention for a number of years. I worked full-time in sexual assault prevention for 3 years in the Midwest for the government.
Okay.
And I can tell you that I have a couple of ideas that could really help the church, regardless of what laws are on the books in their state, and could still keep priest privilege. So we could have help for the families and resources without changing the laws, and still have people come in to talk to their bishops and say, I need some help. So that's the best of both worlds in my mind. And
I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah. What I suggest for the church is the following recipe. Number one, you hire at every stake level. And I wanted to say that there's 3,500 stakes, something like that. I should need to look that up. Mm-hmm. Somewhere around that. At every single stake level, the church hires a full-time mental health professional, because these bishops, as you well know, Al, they are not equipped to handle these complicated sexual.
No way. These guys are not given any training whatsoever when it comes to counseling.
Right.
Yeah. they get set apart, and then they've got the general handbook of instruction that gives them some guidelines to follow. But when it comes to, well, how do you handle a rape victim, or how do you handle somebody that's suffering abuse? There's no training whatsoever.
Right. So they're barely equipped to handle, giving somebody some light financial advice, or if a couple is not necessarily getting along, they're marginally qualified to handle those type of small situations.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. But for a serious sexual abuse, people with pedophilia, people who have serious issues, they're not equipped for that. So at the stake level, the church could hire full-time mental health professional so that the bishop could immediately call upon, somebody comes in who's in a crisis, is suicidal, is having sexual problems, like this individual was a sexual deviant of some sort, could immediately refer that out. And we're not talking about LDS social services where you have to, put your name on the record, and LDS social services, that's not available everywhere. So you have at the stake level, the 4,000 stakes, hire a mental health professional, one for every single stake, so that if Paul Adams, who was the perpetrator in the AP case, as soon as he came in and talked to his bishop, the bishop could then refer him over to a mental health professional that could offer him more serious, high-level help, maybe even prescriptions or whatever else that person needs to reform their behavior.
Exactly.
Okay, that's step number one. Step number two. At the same level, at the stake level, the church needs one full-time social worker for every single stake, so that not only you're sending the perpetrator to the mental health professional, at the same time you're sending your social worker in, typically for the wife and the children. I know that's not the case for everything, but typically it's for the wife and the children. The social worker can go in and help that family while that mental health professional, you're helping the victim, you're helping the perpetrator. You're trying to help everyone in here solve this issue. Mm-hmm. And then the third thing that the church needs to do, or could do, is build mostly women's shelter, but domestic violence and abuse shelters, rape shelters, those type of things. Yeah. And I would suggest doing one per mission. Now, the church has 400 missions out there. Maybe one per stake is probably too much, but one per mission. So that you're sending Paul Adams, in this case, to the mental health professional who's working for the church. You're sending in the social worker who's helping the family, and then you're moving that family to the shelter for a period of time while Paul Adams gets the proper treatment or help that he needs. Yeah. Or the other Paul Adams out there. It's a it's a three-pronged approach. And that's what the government has done throughout the country, and what a lot of people do, and it just works.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have organizations like I believe CAPSA is one of the main people that runs women's shelters across the country that handles people with domestic violence situations. This is something, the church is a huge real estate mogul. They've got plenty of real estate. They've got plenty of properties. They got plenty of room to put up shelters. They got plenty of money to put 4,000 social workers or professional mental health care workers on its payroll. And you know what? All of that stuff can be tax deductible. It's not like, this is something that needs to be, this is going to cost the church. Well, what's the church there for then?
Well, this is going to cost the church. My rough analysis of how much this would cost would put this in the realm of $2 billion, $2 billion in capital, and then about $1 billion a year. Okay. Does the church have that kind of finances, Al?
Absolutely, it does.
Without question.
It does, yep. We've looked at this in weeks past, what the church's finances are looking like. Thank you very much to our friends over at the Widow's Mite, because they're the reason we know this.
Yep. So the church doesn't need to wait for laws. The church doesn't need to wait for anything. They can move on making women safe, on keeping priest privilege around, making sure that the bishops are not being required to break the law, saving the children out of bad situations. The church can have it all. All it takes is resources and commitment. Yeah. The church has the resources. All we need is the commitment.
That's right. And I'll take it even a step further. Go ahead and keep the weird, hotline open so that bishops can call any time of the day or night to get advice on, the damage control for the church. Keep it. You don't have to get rid of all that. This scandal can go away as soon as the church just does something with the commitment there. You've got the finances, just do it.
Open, and then the only other thing is open up the hotline for anybody so that any member can call the hotline and report abuse and get help for that kind of a situation. Don't just make it for bishops and stake presidents.
Sure.
Expand the hotline so that it can help the people who are really suffering. We shouldn't necessarily be helping the bishop. Bishop's great. That's great. Help a bishop. That's great. But the people who need the most help are the people who are in abusive situations.
Exactly. And, let's not kid ourselves. We all know that these kids each have their, little jars at home where they're dividing up every dime into 10 pennies. And then every Sunday handing an envelope to the bishop with their pennies that they're saving for tithing. So, these kids are paying for it themselves.
Hey everybody, it's D-Vase here. Thanks so much for listening to the Mormon News Roundup. If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Allow me to explain. Anchor has the tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. It's everything that you need to make a podcast all in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. So download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
And this goes directly into our Mormon News Roundup question of the week, which you'll see over on Anchor. And speaking of that tithing, Al, you were talking about kids saving up for tithing. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has made some changes to its tithing, hasn't it?
Yep, one of the big topics of the week. This one, I even got my mother-in-law to chime in to me and say, hey, have you looked at this one? And so, as a matter of fact, we will be discussing this one on the show. So I'd like to thank my mother-in-law for pointing that out.
Very nice.
She is a listener, so yeah, thank you very much there.
Hey, great.
This one goes to ksltv.com, and this is really something. So August 11th, 2022, Eliza Pace posted, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints makes changes to tithing settlement. And, you need to go to the show notes and pull up this article because the picture on there is just priceless. You got the whole family in there, and they're all in, the bishop's office for this tithing what's now going to be known as a tithing declaration, no longer to be known as tithing settlement, because like we know, President Nelson is very big on changing names. So now it's not going to be about settlement. It's now going to be about declaration. And he's also extended the time frame so that you don't have to go in, during the holiday season at the end of the year. So you've had a lot of ward clerks and bishoprics trying frantically to get everybody between, say, November or Halloween all the way up to New Year's Day. And it was really, run them ragged trying to get that all settled or figured out, getting everybody's tithing status declared before the end of the year. So they've extended it so it goes as early as September 1st. So the beginning of next month, they will start having families come in and declare their tithing status.
Oh, very nice, very nice. Now, I saw somebody tweeted out that there's a Twitter account out there called Fake LDS Newsroom. So you can follow them at Fake LDS Newsroom, and they just have a hilarious take on everything. It's satirical tweets. And they said that there was a number of tithing declaration ideas that were left on the cutting room floor. And I want to run these by you, Al, and see which one you think has the best sound to it. Tithing attestation, tithing relinquish, tithing surrender, tithing confession, tithing shakedown.
Oh, I like that.
Tithing submission, tithing plunder, tithing, or what about tithing theft? Or tithing demand, tithing oppression, tithing pressure, tithing racket, tithing squeeze, or tithing swindle.
The squeeze, I like that one.
Which, technical declaration that does not have the best sound to it. Which one of those do you like?
I'm a big fan of the ones that involve the bishop wearing some sort of a costume. So there's like the tithing plunder where he's wearing a pirate hat during bishop settlement or during tithing settlement. The other one that I really like is the tithing shakedown. Yeah, I like the shakedown.
Yeah, I kind of like tithing shakedown. Mm-hmm. I think that has a nice ring to it. But you brought up why you thought that the church actually moved away from a tithing settlement. And why did you think that they actually did that, Al?
I think that the church doesn't want to be associating the term settlement, especially going forward, since it seems like the church is getting into some hot water, having to pay out a lot of settlements legally. So I don't think that they want tithing settlement to be viewed as, hey, this is the church, funding its tithings or its settlements in the law by getting people to pay their tithing. So,
and that's a great point. Also, the word settlement itself kind of seems like there was a disagreement and it was like a compromise.
Exactly. So I think that that's probably what they're doing is they're just trying to reword this so that it's that it sounds more like, oh, these are people that are paying their tithing of their own free will and accord.
Absolutely. Yeah. And no trendy tithing, right, Al? We covered that.
No trendy tithing. Yeah.
No, trendy tithing does not count, correct?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, got it. All right, no problem. Yep. Now, we got a couple last articles here to get through, and they're mostly revolving around a big shocker, President Nelson. So from ldsliving.com, we have Tad Welch on an article on August 5th which was brought over from the Church News. President Nelson rededicates the Washington Temple. Mm-hmm. And this is after 4.5 years of renovations, one of the longest renovations of any temple ever.
Yeah.
And this renovation, as we've mentioned before, the amount of workers and the amount of money that they poured into this, it must have been at least $500,000 per month for all of those 4 years. I mean, we're talking about a multi-million-dollar renovation here.
Yeah.
Now, if you actually look out at the first dedication that happened to the DC Temple in 1974, the church released a church-produced video, which actually they said how much they claimed that the DC Temple cost to make.
Oh, my interest is piqued.
Yeah. Now they said that the DC Temple cost $15 million back in 1974.
Really?
Yeah, but I'll bet you that the renovation alone cost more than $15 million just for the renovation that lasted for almost 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. It costs more to renovate it than it did to build it. That's shocking.
Yeah. Now, that is assuming that the $15 million number is accurate. Mm-hmm. I would not be surprised at all if that was a bit of a low ball number, Al.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But then again, this is also back in the 60s?
1974.
Oh, 74. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
so,
1974.
It could be $15 million in 1974 dollars.
That'd be worth what about?
Certainly not $15 million by today.
No, not by today. Now, President Nelson, he rededicated it in 3 sessions. So, and the entire first presidency of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was at this dedication. That is that is unprecedented, Al.
No, yeah, that's really something. So this is probably the church's most important temple. Probably even more important to the church than the Salt Lake Temple.
It's got to be number 1 and number 2.
Yeah.
Without question.
For sure.
So President Nelson did the initial dedication on Sunday at, I believe it was at 9:30. And then President Oaks reread the same prayer for the second session, which I think was at 1. And then President Eyring did the same prayer again at 5 o'clock p.m. Now, to get to the tickets themselves, it was very difficult to get tickets to the actual temple. So they did it at the local chapel level over the airways, but you still needed a temple recommend to get into those chapels because that is still considered a dedication.
Yeah.
Now, what I also found interesting was Susan Bednar's husband was missing in action for this entire situation.
Your favorite apostle, David Bednar.
Yes.
I wonder where he was.
Yeah, I wonder where he was. He does get around a lot. I mean, he is probably, and this is all anecdotal because the church has not released the apostles' travel itineraries and schedules, but it just really seems like Elder Bednar really, really gets around at the local and the stake level because the amount of videos that are released, recordings, he's got to be one of the most active apostles out there.
Oh, shoot. He's still the youngest, isn't he?
Yeah.
So I imagine they're just using the crap out of him.
Yeah, without question. Now, the reason I say he's missing in action was because he was out here for the for the tours.
Yeah.
He gave the most high-profile media tours through the temple, various high-profile. And then he also stuck around at the National Press Club briefing a short time later. So he was very much involved with this temple rededication, but he didn't get the nod for the actual ceremony itself.
Yeah, For sure.
Now, President Nelson, his last time that he dedicated a temple was way back in 2019 in the Rome, Italy temple. And there's been 11 temple dedications in between then and now. And President Uchtdorf, not president, but Dieter Uchtdorf has been getting most of the nods for the temple dedications.
Oh, really? So they've got him running around dedicating the temples. Okay.
Yeah, they've got him doing it. And President Nelson now, he's the longest living apostle, right, in Latter-day Saint history, right, Al?
Yes, he is. That's our next one. Is we've got President Nelson is beaten out his predecessor, David B. Haight, for the longest reigning apostle. So David B. Haight, he passed away in 2004, and he was 97 at the time. And President Nelson will be 98 next month, September 9th. And now, as of earlier this week, he passed up David B. Haight because, month to month or day to day, that's how, he's got more days being ordained as an apostle. I believe David Haight was ordained back in the 50s. And so we've got, Russell M. Nelson being ordained in the 60s. Yeah, he's been in church leadership a long time as an apostle.
He sure has. And as Stephen Pinecker of the Mormon Book Reviews would say, that's some good word of wisdom living right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but, there's a couple of people who are really upset about this article, and it kind of surprised me, Al. And I can't really imagine why.
Okay.
And 3 people in particular, 3 famous Mormons, were extremely upset about this article, which... Yeah. Actually, now that I think about it, I kind of realize why they are upset. And those 3 people in particular are the 3 Nephites.
Oh, the 3 Nephites.
Yeah, what happened? What?
Have you been picking up hitchhikers and they told you? Is that how you found out?
Well, they if you read the Reddit subforums, I'm telling you, these 3 Nephites, they pop up in the darndest locations, Al.
Yes, they do. The 3 Nephites, and it seems like they're always hitchhiking.
Yeah,
they like hospitals and they love hitchhiking.
They're kind of like the Amish. They can't buy a vehicle, but they're not afraid to ride around in one.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and they are absolutely furious. This is according to legendary. This is unconfirmed, right? This is legendary sourers.
Yeah,
they are absolutely pissed off because they've been serving as apostles now for what 2,000, almost 2,000 years.
About 2,000 years, really? Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and John the apostle, the beloved. Yeah. He's also not thrilled about this. So
yeah,
I don't know what to say.
Because he's supposed to still be around too, and he's one of the original apostles.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know that.
Yeah, I can understand why these guys are upset. If any of our listeners out there, please be safe. Don't pick up hitchhikers. But if you happen to pick up a hitchhiker that's one of the 3 Nephites, ask them how they feel about that.
Yeah, and while you're at it, come on over to Facebook and drop us a like, drop us a subscription, or we're on Twitter at @newsmormon on Twitter, and we also upload these onto YouTube. Come over, drop us a like, drop us a subscription, let us know your thoughts about whether the 3 Nephites are right to be upset. Yeah. And that does bring us to our final article, which is the new church historian and recorder, Elder Kyle S. McKay, and he has been appointed as the new church's new historian. And this is an article dated 13 August 2022 by Christine Rapley. And so we have a new church historian, and a big shocker to you, Al, guess what? He's not a historian.
Oh, he's not?
No. No, I know that comes
What's his profession?
Yeah, I'll give you 2 guesses there. It seems like everyone in the upper ranks of the church is either a businessman or a lawyer.
I was going to guess he was an artist, but yeah, I'm guessing he's a lawyer, right?
You're going to guess that he was a cafeteria lunch worker prior to his appointment?
That's a possibility. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe a construction flagger.
Yeah, construction flagger. That's one. I want to see.
Yeah, or construction flagger, or maybe he was a busboy at a spaghetti factory.
Yeah.
No, those people, for some reason, Alec, cannot figure it out. They never quite seem to get called into these high positions. It's just
even other kinds of professions. They've got. What is it? ATK Thiokol that's up there in northern Utah where they build the rockets.
Yeah,
we've got rocket scientists in Utah. How come we don't ever get rocket scientists in church leadership or these positions? Or why don't we have a rocket scientist be the historian?
Well, I call me old-fashioned here, Al. And I told you I was an academic. I taught at BYU for a number of years.
Yes, you are.
And if you're going to have somebody who's in charge of an entire department, if it's the physics department, the head is virtually 99% of the time is a physics. How do you say that? A
physicist?
Yes. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Yeah, as a physicist, a mathematics department, he's a mathematician. If you have a history department,
it's a historian. Yeah.
If you think back and look at all of the church historians over the years, only Leonard Arrington was a real historian.
Mm-hmm. He was a good historian too.
Yes, he was, and that's why he was fired.
Yeah.
And demoted. And pushed it back down to BYU.
Yeah, it happened.
Yeah, and so here's from the article. He says in the article here, Elder McKay here says, quote, "I'm called the church historian, but in truth, the real historians are the people I work with," end quote. Yeah, you don't say.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. Oh,
Well, there's a reason why we have a lawyer there. His position is purely for damage control.
Yeah, and he also has a very interesting take on what his purpose is. Mm-hmm. He says that, quote, "Since learning of this assignment, I have felt drawn to the rising generations and to protect them and build their faith." What do you hear when you hear that, Al? What do you think of?
That sounds icky the way you said that.
Well, what do you mean?
Well, what it sounds like to me is that we'd rather protect the kids from the truth and only give them the information that's going to be faith promoting.
Yeah, the old faith promoting narrative here.
These kids can't handle the truth. Not like our listeners. Our listeners are grown-ups. They can handle whatever, the good, the bad, and the ugly of the church. And that's why we reach out to all you guys, and that's why we do this podcast, because you're all adults. The rising generation, kids can handle the truth. I mean, there's certainly debates about, do you tell kids about Santa Claus or not? But when we're not talking about kids that are young and like real little. We're talking about teenagers. That's the rising generations that they're talking about. And these ones, you do a lot better when you're straightforward with them, when you're honest with them, than if you're trying to pull the wool over their eyes, and they'll sniff it out. Kids are not stupid.
Yeah, in fact, he says in the article, quote, "I believe that church history has the capacity to strengthen faith and ought to be used for that purpose," end quote. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that is the purpose of everything in the church. Absolutely everything is to strengthen faith. The church history department, in my mind, the purpose of the church history department would be to share church history.
Yeah.
Make it available. It doesn't have an ulterior motive. History in and of itself is valuable. If you go back and look at Doctrine and Covenants, I believe it is section 47, says that John Whitmer was called to serve as the first church historian. And it gives Doctrine and Covenants section 69 gives instructions. Everything doesn't have to be faith promoting,
Yeah, for sure.
It can just exist in and of itself. That's just,
and the historian, this whole purpose is to preserve the records of what our history is and what our heritage is. If you start messing around too much with that, then all of a sudden it's no longer the truth.
Exactly. I mean, so we want to be able to read the stories that are not flattering.
Yeah.
Because that's our history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if the purpose of the history department is only to promote faith promoting stories, then we don't get the whole complete picture.
Exactly. If all you care about is whether Dieter Uchtdorf went and played golf this weekend, there's other places that'll tell you that. But that's not what we're about.
No. I think that wraps it up for us on the news. Now, next week, Al, we got an exciting guest on the, hopefully his computer doesn't crash and hopefully he's here, but it's Dr. John Turner. He's going to be on the program next week, and he writes, teaches, and speaks about the place of religion in American history. He's a professor of religious studies at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia, and he has special interest in the world of Mormonism and has written a number of books on the subject. Should be a very exciting guest.
Yeah, we're really excited to have him on next week. And for Radio Free Mormon, we wish you all the best. I'm sorry that it didn't work out this week. A lot of the jabs that we threw out there today they were all in good fun, and we do look forward to having him on in the future when there's a better time. So in the meantime, thank you very much to Weird Alma for allowing us to use his music for the intro and the outro to our podcast. He's certainly blessed us with his work, and I think that's a good point for us to jump off into in his hit from Straight Outta Titles with Straight Outta in the title.
When it comes to nicknames of the church, such as LDS Church, the Mormon Church, to remove the Lord's name from the Lord's church is a major victory for Satan.
Satan.
Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a being with no moral constraints. My number one goal is to hurt the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.